The August 14th meeting of the Durham Planning Board should come to order. We'll start with a roll call. Richard?
Yeah, Richard Kelly's here this evening.
Heather Grant?
Peyton McManus.
Michael Barron, Town Planner, and Rob Sullivan and Erica Norman Gaylot cannot make it tonight.
Paul Rasmussen?
Sally Tobias?
Tom DeCampo.
All right, well, Heather, we are expecting M, but until that happens, you've got the alternate slot. All right. Approval of the agenda. I'm kind of good with it. I'm going to, depending on how the public hearing goes, we may or may not do zoning definitions. I want to make sure I reserve some time so we can discuss the items that are other business. So if it, we'll see what the clock says when we get to that point. Any other comments?
Nope.
All right. Accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. All right. Town planners report. Reports from board members who serve on other committees.
I can do housing since you weren't at the last meeting.
Thank you.
So the Housing Task Force met on Monday, and we, the focus was, Todd Selleck came and talked to us about how to best use Friday updates for the outreach, and so we came to an understanding about how to best use that, which is good. And then he also brought to the board a concern about downtown vibrancy and how to add more adults and probably some multifamily housing to the downtown. And the group discussed that, and we are aware that we have two planning board members that are working at it and like looking at the downtown, and the Housing Task Force has some ideas, and we'd kind of like to, so we're all going in the same direction, and we're not all going in many different directions. So to focus on that, because it is going to be a very large task. There's a lot of challenges in the downtown. The terrain is different depending upon where you are on the downtown, so it'll be interesting to do that. And then we discussed our outreach, how that was going, and what else was, there was one other thing. Oh, we went over the proposed housing overlay district amendment, and that was pretty much that.
Thank you. Em, are you ready for town council?
Sure. So a couple of updates there. We got to meet our new superintendent of Oyster River Schools, came in and said hello, as well as the new president of UNH. In terms of UNH and kind of what may be happening at West Edge, Burton may be joining that kind of committee as well, to help facilitate kind of some town gown conversations around what that development may look like. And it was very encouraging from the new UNH president to hear commitment from her about really partnering with the town of Durham and building a great relationship there. And she hopes to be here for the next decade, so she's committed, has moved into Durham as a Durham resident. So that's all exciting. And also Parks and Rec was interested in receiving a copy of the Stratford County Planning Commission Active Transportation Plan. So I think that they're now going to have that on their agenda, which may provide some insight into connectivity around bike trails and sidewalks, as well as we think about the bigger picture in town, and certainly that's relevant to the ordinance we're discussing tonight. And then for the Energy Committee, we had a presentation from the workforce, from the Housing Task Force, and that was a really nice conversation. And following that, the Energy Committee did vote to send some public to the planning board tonight around the workforce housing ordinance, which I got to you guys very late, so I apologize for that, but you should have received in your email, and if not, I can restate them or bring them back if we don't finish the hearing tonight. And I think that's kind of the major things that are relevant to planning board. If I'm forgetting something, please jump in, Councilor
We
Grant.
have a resolution but that's not necessarily related to the planning board, so.
Yeah, I think that's okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Agricultural Commission met this past Monday. The two main topics of conversation were finalizing planning for Farm Day that occurs this Saturday, and also the topic of the impact of the workforce housing amendment on parcels in town that have high soil quality. And that resulted in a memo or a letter from the Ag Commission that was presented to the Planning Board.
Anyone else? No. All right. Public comments? This will be for general comments. If you are here to speak to the workforce housing zoning amendment, that will be a little bit later. Do we have anyone in Zoom?
Not with hands up.
All right, thank you.
So I'm Ellen Correlitz, I'm a member of the Agricultural Commission.
Could you speak up, please?
Ellen Correlitz, member of the Agricultural Commission. I've been a member since the beginning of the commission. And you received a memo from us, and I just would like to read a couple paragraphs from that memo.
If that, please do that during the public hearing.
When is the public hearing?
Public hearing is 2 action items away.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Our next item is recognition of Bill McGowan, a longtime planning board member. Bill, could you join me at the podium?
I used to be at the side of the table.
Does it feel weird over there?
Right here.
He's smiling a lot more than
Bill,
you
you
do.
were.
He is.
I want to thank you. I mean, you were on the board when I joined, and you stuck it out. And you, I know you've been on the
Microphones.
board
Microphones down.
for a long time, even before that. So I know you've been here for ages. And just the whole town just appreciates all the time you gave us.
Well, thank you.
So I'm here. The Planning Board of Durham, New Hampshire expresses its deep gratitude to Bill McGowan for sharing his time and his insights over many years of service as a member of the Planning Board, 2005 to 2024.
Thank you.
Photo op.
Gotta get-
I had to say out of newspapers.
That's great. All right. Big smile. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoy. I'm going to be leaving.
Thank you.
All right. Didn't take him long to get out, did it? All right, the next item. Public hearing, workforce housing zoning amendment. Amendment for a proposed new Article 18.1 Workforce Housing Overlay District for the purpose of providing opportunities for the development of workforce and affordable housing and to assure the availability of a diverse supply of rental housing. The article includes provisions regarding density, rent levels, types of dwelling units, other allowed uses, open space, infrastructure, and other matters. The overlay district includes 2 areas, most of the office research district and a large parcel in the residence coastal district. And 2, the entire office and research light industry district located north of Mast Road. Related changes are made to several other articles, including the density allowance for workforce housing and conservation subdivisions. All right. Shall we open the public hearing?
I move that we open the public hearing.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Public hearing is open. If you'd like to speak on this matter, please approach the podium and introduce yourself.
John Carroll, 54 Canny Road. While I'm a member of the Land Stewardship Subcommittee and also the Durham Agricultural Commission, I do not represent those bodies here this evening. The Durham AgCom is represented by others who you will hear from shortly. I would like to applaud our town administrator's good letter to the town planner, which my wife Diana shared with me. Indeed, we need much more emphasis on creating good lodging opportunities in the downtown business district, our core, and much less emphasis on destroying good agricultural land and agricultural soils in the countryside. Destroying our remaining good agricultural soils in our countryside, Durham will have many regrets about that destruction and loss in the future. We must do what we can to preserve the food productivity of those good productive soils now and not tolerate their loss. But to get back to Todd's good letter, the way to save the economic value of our downtown Durham business district is to populate it, to get more people living downtown, and to populate it in particular, not only with students, but with a wide diversity of both workforce housing and seniors housing. As for students, that UNH, like all of its sister institutions in other states in our region and beyond, will enroll smaller and smaller numbers of undergraduates in the future, both due to the now more rapidly declining birth rate, but also to both the advance of remote learning and the changing attitude of families toward the high cost of undergraduate education. When Diana and I arrived in Durham 50 years ago this month, back in 1974, UNH had a grand total of only about 6,000 students, undergraduate and graduate combined. And while graduate education will continue to advance, as will the research mission of the university, those things will never come to involve the student numbers associated with undergraduate education. The handwriting is on the wall, and our only hope downtown is to bring new populations into downtown housing. Thank you.
After Eleanor, I'll be taking someone from Zoom if there's any hands up.
So, as I said before, I'm Ellen Corrales. I'm a member of the Agricultural Commission. I have been since the beginning. The commission did submit a letter to the planning board, and I just wanted to read a paragraph from that letter.
Can you speak up, please? You speak into the mic. The mic doesn't help.
The mic is not. All right, I will read the first paragraph. The Durham Agricultural Commission is writing to express its strong opposition to the proposed workforce housing overlay district, which includes prime agricultural soils. The Agricultural Commission's rejection of this proposal underscores the importance of preserving these lands, which, if developed on, will no longer be able to provide future community-wide benefits of sustainable food production and ecosystem services. The town of Durham has already sacrificed significant agricultural soils for housing development. It is imperative that we do not continue this trend. The opportunity cost of converting even more agricultural land into residential development is too great and will permanently and significantly sacrifice the future food and environmental sustainability capacity of the town of Durham. Furthermore, the proposed overlay district would be directly antithetical to the town council's goal of increasing local food production to support the regional goal of reaching 30% local food consumption in the Northeast. Instead, the Agricultural Commission strongly believes that rather than seeking less sustainable solutions, such as new developments, the town of Durham should remain dedicated to its long-term, well-vetted goals in its 2015 Durham Master Plan to create an overlay district within the existing infrastructure downtown. And that corresponds to, I think, the letter that Todd also submitted. I think as a commission member, I understand that the community may not share the same sense of urgency that the commission feels about the importance of saving having this land preserved. I think this community has been, I would say, even fierce about preserving conservation lands and wildlife habitat, and I think we need to be fierce now also about saving agricultural soils. It can't just be a line item on the master plan that people just ignore every time there's an opportunity to do something about it. And so I really hope that you'll take that into consideration.
So, I know I felt we kind of did by having a 60% open space requirement, which could then, that 60% would be open for agricultural uses, and that way we wouldn't be totally eliminating it. You feel that's not suitable?
No, because you're still going to be building on that land. That is going to impact the fertility. We need to keep larger areas of soil, healthy soil available in the community, because ultimately, I think we're going to need to be able to use that soil.
Well, you realize right now, all those plots are open for residential, right?
Right now.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
They're all-
even if we do nothing, that's not going to stop what you're saying is going to happen.
Well, I know there were some things in the letter that we sent you suggesting some other alternatives.
We're
So-
talking about private land, not public land.
No, I know. I realize that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Peyton has his hand up. I don't know if you
Oh,
want-
did you have a question for Ellen?
If you're speaking for the Agricultural Committee, or I could ask anyone else that's going to speak to that, it's fine. I guess since you're at the podium, if I could just ask a few questions. Is there any agricultural development? Is there any farming or any of that taking place right now
On that?
on that lot?
No, not that I'm aware of on that lot right now.
Do you know when any farming or any agricultural activity took place on that lot?
I'm not sure. But I'm not sure if the Keefs farmed that. I mean,
Looking forward, assuming that it is open for other development, if someone's going to come in and buy that, do you think they'd buy it to farm?
possibly.
That,
I mean, possibly, yes.
okay.
I,
Given all the other options that someone could use that land for, and it's not in current agricultural activity right now, looking forward, assuming the town doesn't buy it, do you think someone would buy that and the best use of that land would be
I guess the
agricultural?
way personally that I feel about it is, if you're saying somebody could go in there and buy that land and make a lot more money or do something, of course, that might be the case. My argument is that we need to look past that, and because this is the way we've always dealt with our land. We need to stop doing that, and we need to preserve this land for agriculture. We need to support agriculture. That's why I'm here.
All right, thank you.
Are there any, could I have a hand from Zoom?
Nobody has their hands up on Zoom right now.
All right, thank you. Someone from the audience?
Good evening, Robin Mower, Britton Lane. I've got a long set of pages. Mention housing these days and everyone has an opinion. I want to thank those of you who have worked past opinions to the hard work of crafting this rough draft ordinance. I believe that the swing of a pendulum is a good analogy for how society works through change, first at the extremes and then settling somewhere in the middle. The settlement period may be painful, but as we all know, the art of legislation and of politics is finding some sort of compromise or sometimes even a new position. We do need to find a new position, and that is to work toward workforce housing as a major component of several missing housing components. I believe that an inclusionary zoning approach would better serve Durham. After all, the mandate of the Housing Task Force more closely aligns with the concept of inclusionary zoning than does this draft ordinance. The New Hampshire Handbook of Innovative Land Use Planning Techniques notes the value of inclusionary zoning. The ordinances facilitate mixed income development where a portion of the new units created are reserved for qualified low to moderate income households, while the remaining units are sold or rented at or above market value. Developments should be designed with a common aesthetic, making the affordable units blend in and be visually unidentifiable from the rest. Thus, inclusionary zoning helps avoid the segregation of affordable or low-income housing, allowing a more diverse and appealing housing stock to be created. It's clear that this ordinance derives from a sense of urgency to create opportunity for the Keefe property along Route 4, and I appreciate that many residents have stressed a desire to do something now, preferably big. But there's an inherent problem in trying to tailor criteria to suit a specific parcel of land and then extrapolate to a broader application. I see this particularly in the inclusion of land north of Mast Road in Orley, but also because, like Administrator Selig, I would like to see workforce housing be an option in central Durham. No, it would likely not be of similar scale to what is laid out in this draft, but it would contribute to the long-term viability of the town. And by the way, is mention of the Church Hill District in the ordinance an error? It doesn't seem to make sense. Section J, Density and Dimensional Standards, states, "The dimensional standards specified for the Church Hill District shall apply to any project developed under this overlay district," and goes on to mention wetlands. Also, Church Hill is not shown on the overlay map. So please correct me if I'm missing something, but you might want to check that. I want to share a bit of personal history and observations from someone who has known a very different Durham, one that was indeed vibrant and provided housing opportunities for the very definitely not upper middle class. When I was growing up in Durham, both UNH and non-UNH populations were quite a bit smaller, as John Carroll has mentioned too. Homes were modest, if not small. Children shared small bedrooms, and entire families often shared a single bathroom. My father's home office had been a closet, and I could swear that, given the size of it, my brother's bedroom also could have been a closet. Vacations tended to be visits to family or friends, or perhaps tent camping. The term walkability had not yet been invented, but it was a real and obvious benefit of living in the neighborhoods within a mile or so of downtown. No one had expectations for the kind of housing that many in today's generations appear to have. Obviously, those higher expectations translate to higher costs. I would say small is not bad. It is manageable and better. Second, history that shaped Durham includes both the extraordinary dedication of families, some still with us, to create a school system, develop single-family neighborhoods, and protect natural amenities that today attract many would-be residents. These attractions did not arise overnight. Indeed, it is one of the oldest neighborhoods, the faculty neighborhood, whose 175 homes are today's hot real estate. The houses were built sturdily enough to invite renovation or additions rather than tear-downs even today. Trees and gardens planted decades ago provide grace and interest that cannot be duplicated in new developments. So how do we incorporate new housing of the quality and quantity that is appropriate to maintaining such positive features? I, for one, do not want to see development that looks good for initial sale, but does not hold up well for the occupants or the community. Is the draft ordinance up to the task? From what I can gather from meeting minutes and snatches of viewing your meetings, I deduce that this is truly a draft document and that the board would appreciate public input as it continues to shape the ordinance. I hope that is an accurate statement. Given the draft nature, I would like to ask questions. Among them are the following 8, and there are lots more, but I'm sparing you. 1, which other New Hampshire town codes did you consult and borrow from? In my research, I found that we might do well to take segments from several rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. These range from perpetuity clauses to general standards or criteria that include impacts of the proposed density on soil, compatibility of design with surrounding elements. For example, the project shall not detract from either the ecological or the visual qualities of the environment. Landscaping, a demonstration of economic viability, and authority of the board. For example, quote, the planning board reserves the right to modify density allowances if during its comprehensive site plan review it determines that physical, land characteristics, or other considerations do not support preliminary density allowances. 2, the vision statement in the master plan chapter on demographics and housing reads in part, existing and new housing stock is environmentally conscious and, quote, Durham compatible. It provides high-quality, attractive living space for owners and renters while respecting Durham's rich natural and historic resources. How do we meet that goal in a way that housing built today will be best in class and endure for decades, mindful that Durham housing built in the mid-20th century has held up? 3, it appears that the board is simply accepting the RKG Housing Needs Assessment quantification of a housing gap, despite questionable data. I can refer the board to several independent articles about the drawbacks relying on the American Community Survey, which forms the backbone for the RKG report. What is the board's argument for dismissing the regional impact of Durham's dedicating a large portion of buildable land to student housing, i.e. the benefit of opening up housing in other towns in the region? Durham has a right and the obligation to argue that the figures in the RKG report are suspect. 4, RSA 674:59 workforce housing opportunities uses the term reasonable and realistic. Has the planning board focused on this requirement of the RSA? What is reasonable and realistic for one town is not for another, from many angles, including available buildable land and competing uses for that land. 5, the planning board chair stated at a recent meeting that we do not want to see senior housing as part of a workforce housing development. The ordinance prohibits the construction of a single-family house in these areas. Does that mean that I could not build a small house to which I could downsize, thereby making available to a family the house that I leave? That goes against another obvious need in this, living on fixed incomes in houses too large for them to maintain or enjoy. Isn't that short-sighted? 6, why do we need to allow 3-bedroom units? And if we do, why do we not cap the percentage? 7, rural areas. In its housing needs assessment report, at least portions of the census tracts that RKG emphasizes as opportunities are inappropriate for intense development. Census tract analysis ignores land suitability for development, for example, extensive wetlands and conservation areas and access to transportation. Here's a quote. RKG Associates recommends that Durham update its zoning ordinances to lower the minimum required usable lot size per dwelling unit in residential districts. So far, so good. Especially in the rural district, to lower the land costs. But this argument creates sprawl, the antithesis. Rural, undeveloped areas benefit the broader community and help define Durham. The gateways to Durham are features that set Durham apart from neighboring towns. While Mast Road, Newmarket Road, and Route 4 along Wagon Hill Farm are not designated scenic roads, they are scenic and serve to welcome home returning residents. I, for one, do not want to live in a town that throws away the gift of scenic views and reminders of our rural heritage. These natural features are not just of aesthetic value. They are particularly therapeutic as we all experience increasing social and natural stresses. 8. The Workforce Housing Opportunities RSA sets specific terms, among them, quote, "A municipality that adopts land use ordinances and regulations shall allow workforce housing to be located in a majority, but not necessarily all, of the land area that is zoned to permit residential uses within the municipality. Such a municipality shall have the discretion to determine what land areas are appropriate to meet this obligation. This obligation may be satisfied by the adoption of inclusionary zoning as defined in an RSA. This paragraph shall not be construed to require a municipality to allow for the development of multifamily housing in a majority of its land zone to permit residential uses." And I just want to ask whether the ordinance meets those terms. What is the area of Durham's land that permits residential uses? Obviously, central business, Church Hill, professional office, RA, and RB districts are not included. And does that matter legally? I close with a request. It would be helpful for the community, for the board and/or planner, to take the time before another public hearing to explain the key features of the ordinance, how the board arrived at those, and to take a stab at its impact, such as on transportation planning and on taxes as relate to services ranging from Parks and Rec, police, and public works, from staffing to new equipment. Would new developments include private roads for which the developer would be responsible? Or would they add to the burden for town departments and in turn for taxpayers at large? I'm certain that most Durham residents would be supportive of paying slightly higher taxes, but I believe we all have a right to know and understand the underlying arguments that lead to those higher taxes. Thank you.
Did you want us to answer any of those questions now?
I don't expect that in a public hearing, but I think those questions should be answered by the board, perhaps in such a document that I am requesting be prepared for the public. I will send a version of this in, and you can see it.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
The response was, it can be done at a later time, and not during a public hearing. Next.
Dave Langley, 234 Long Marsh Road, to represent the Ag Commission, and let you know that I, for one, believe that if you're going to focus additional workforce housing or workforce housing as proposed, that it should be in the built-up areas. Recognize the fact that anybody could go into that property tomorrow. They're not likely to buy it to turn it into a farm, obviously, at this stage of the game. But if anybody's paying attention, there's a storm coming, folks, and at some future point, not too far off, I'm afraid, we're going to have to be more responsible for our own food. Now, in the process of your deliberations, did you consider the fact that the baby boom generation is the largest generation we've ever had, and by 2050, most of those folks will have, how do I delicately say this, aged out. And Gen Z is the smallest generation we've ever had. Those demographic trends are going to continue as far as anyone knows. And so if there's more baby boomers leaving than there are younger people moving in, there are going to be a lot of empty houses available in this town. So something to consider. I don't know if you have, but something to think about.
Do we have any hands in Zoom?
Not right now.
All right.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Churchill. I live over on Old Piscataqua Road. Been a resident here since 1988. I'll try to keep my comments brief. I have several objections to the proposed zoning ordinance changes, but before I go over those, I would like to state that I don't think there's anybody in this room who objects to trying to provide quality housing to low-income people. But I want to segue right into that. I would like to welcome them into this community by being able to buy something. Your proposal is all rentals. I would like a good explanation why people can't buy affordable housing in this community. I don't have any facts, can't cite a study, but my common sense says people take care of things that they own better. My next objection is the scale. It's just outrageous. 200 units. When I first read 200 units, I'm thinking 200 condos, 200 townhouses, 200 apartments. But it's not that at all. An efficiency apartment is 0.33 units. A two-bedroom apartment is 0.5 units. The planning board can approve a 20% increase. I mean, do the math. We're talking the potential for thousands of people to enter this. And as it said, the population's declining. The Stratford County study says it isn't. You look at some federal studies, they're projecting 1% growth through 2050. And they're also projecting a lot of demographic movement towards the Sunshine States and towards areas that have technology belts. I want workforce housing, I just don't want it on the scale. I don't want this grand experiment that could backfire on us. I think that you're, taking chances that aren't warranted. And as far as the agricultural land goes, I have to agree with that. That's part of the argument, but my common sense says you want to offer housing to low-income people. One of the big expenses for people and families is transportation. Having two cars and people working, that's a big expense. If you can facilitate the use of public transportation, yes, you can run a bus out there, but we have buses here in town already and transportation here in town already, and people can walk to the grocery store. So it makes more sense to keep it a little bit closer to Durham. So big objections are that the people can't own, and the scale, those are my two big objections. So thank you for your time, and I do applaud everybody for wanting to help, people enter our community and make it affordable. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Keep in mind that the 200 number given in the ordinance is a maximum. We thought it was appropriate to have a maximum because there are some large parcels. It's unfortunate if people focus on that. The 200, again, a very large parcel. And the 0.33 and all that, those density bonuses would not apply here. That's referenced to another part of the ordinance. If there was a very large parcel and there was good reason, the planning board by conditional use could approve more than 200 units. But that would only be by conditional use on a large parcel for good cause.
Okay, you're rezoning. Is there a piece of property right now that is a large parcel?
There's a few larger parcels in the proposed overlay area.
The Mass Road, is that enough to support a 200 unit?
It depends. There's various parcels of different sizes.
So do the math.
That is just given as a maximum.
All right, so fine, you're defining a maximum. Give me a hypothetical case. Say a developer did find a piece of property that could have 200 units. Give me a maximum number of dwelling units, not your
200.
units. My
200.
units.
200.
200.
Those numbers you quoted about 0.33 and 0.5, they don't apply to this work overlay district.
What do they apply to?
That's other places for senior housing.
That's the bit about the senior housing. We were saying the senior housing bonuses that you just referred to don't apply to this. Because we didn't want everything piling up on top of each other.
Okay, so then could a unit be defined as a 3-bedroom apartment? Would that be one unit?
That's one unit.
Yeah, that'd be one unit.
All right, so that would be 600 beds, 600 people, all right.
Those are sold as
It
apartments.
just seems like a lot of people to me. You wanted to define a maximum. I see no reason to define a smaller number, and if it works out, great, let's welcome more people. But let's call, a spade a spade. There are people in this country that I don't want to welcome into this community. I want people who are willing to work and have a good work ethic and are willing to take care of their property. So I would rather see it as a smaller number.
Just keep in mind that the road to home ownership is through renting. That you can't save up a down payment straight out of college.
No, I disagree with you on that. I think that most people, not most people, a lot of people who are able to get into housing get help from relatives.
Well, what about those people that don't? What about those people that work in retail and will never own a home?
I think that.
So I agree. Let's offer some rental.
We hit a wall right there.
I agree that we should offer rentals. I just also feel like there should be opportunities to own straight forthwith.
Yeah,
I think this is a really great opportunity to hear from the public, and I want to thank people for coming forth, and I think that it shows opportunities for us to clarify where there is confusion and to take notes, and whether that language, that clarification needs to be adopted into the ordinance, or whether, I think it makes a lot of sense, as someone suggested, to have kind of a document or a PowerPoint that explains all of these concerns. And so I thank you for highlighting, something that's a really valid point of confusion. And we're here to listen, and I think, we will have our chance for deliberation for later, but I think we should try and save the deliberation for later.
All right.
Right, that's right. We will respond to these concerns, in particular, the question of rent versus own. We will definitely respond to these.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
So my name is Timothy Horgan. I live at 7A Faculty Road in Durham, and as probably everybody around the table knows, I'm a state rep, and this past session we dealt with the issue of the Section 8 housing vouchers and the guarantees for those who have them, and it's a program that's too small, to be, and somewhat ineffective, but it's basically a good program, and it's been attacked a lot by rental housing owners because it held requirements on what what the tenants can expect from the landlords. But that's not a bad thing, and it's a federal program. Anytime the federal government spends money, we can make fun of how detailed their regulations are, but they're spending our taxpayers' money, and they have the fiduciary obligation to make sure that the taxpayer money is spent appropriately. So that's so I think that's good that you put that section G in there. Section F about the fair market rents is a good thing. We have the rental market is far from the ideal free market, so that the rates you do need some regulation of the rates, and so that's, and also we dealt with this last session. We had a bill which I was a co-sponsor of. I'm sure if I'm reelected, I'll probably be involved with a similar bill, especially since both representatives, I was on the committee that dealt with those landlord-tenant bills, which is the Judiciary Committee, and actually another member of the committee is here, but I think she's not planning to speak, so I'm just speaking for myself. And another subject we've dealt with in this past session, and we will in many future sessions, whether or not I'm part of it, is just the larger issue of the state aid to towns and cities and school districts. And one of the effects of the way the system we have now, which I think everybody agrees is regressive and not very, is that there's a disincentive for communities to attract families with children, and the workforce housing would mostly be people who are of the stage in life where they're raising children. So that's that's a perverse incentive in the current tax policy, and hopefully maybe we can make those incentives more appropriate, because certainly encouraging a town to drive out young people with children that's not a good thing for the long-term health of the community or the state. So I do certainly applaud the fact you put the section G and section F in particular, and it looks like this ordinance is not quite ready. The prime time, to use a cliche we hear a lot in Concord and here but I think it's So you need some more work, but I'm glad you put Section F and Section G in there, and I guess good luck with the whole process, which I guess is not quite complete. In fact, you probably got a long road ahead of you, so thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Beth Olshansky, Packers Falls Road. Before I begin, I would like some clarification on something that seems to be confusing to me and others, and that is in the document, which I picked up on the table. It does talk about conservation subdivision and density incentives, the .33, the .5. So I'm confused how that interfaces with the workforce overlay, and if you could explain that, that would be helpful before I speak.
Right, good question. As you'll see, the ordinance, there's a couple of different articles that are affected. The main one on that sheet is item 2, Article 8, is item 3, Article 18.1, and that's the workforce housing. Those are the provisions, and that's the bulk of this paper. But there are a few other articles in here, just because with this change, there's a few other things affected, and those had to be addressed. That's a good question about Article 19, conservation subdivisions. So there's 2 points that two changes that we made there. One is to be clear that we have an existing workforce housing part of the conservation subdivision, and that is remaining in there. So, and there's a lot of, it hasn't really been used, but that's great that we have it. Maybe someone will use it someday. And maybe we will revisit that and adjust some of that. But we wanted to be very clear that the workforce housing ordinance is totally separate from that. The conservation subdivision is complex, the workforce housing formula there is complex, and that's totally separate. And the second point is that the current incentive in the conservation subdivision for workforce housing is a 20% bonus, and it's a little confusing how it works, and it hasn't been used as far as I know. But there's a state law that from a couple of years ago that says any municipality that has a density bonus for senior housing, the same bonus must apply to workforce housing. So we do have this existing provision in the ordinance, a density bonus for senior housing. If it's a 1-bedroom unit, it counts as a third of a unit. If it's a 2-bedroom unit, it counts as a half of a unit. And we're not changing that as part of this. I don't know if the community would want to revisit that. That certainly could be done. But in order to comply with that state law that says workforce housing must be the same bonus, we're changing that 20% bonus in the conservation subdivision to the same language as the senior housing. So that's a separate thing. It's almost a I don't want to say housekeeping, but that piece of it is separate from this main ordinance, mainly driven by that statute.
Okay, but in the current workforce conservation subdivision, is a 3-bedroom house really given 0.5 worth of dwelling unit points?
Yeah, well, that's what the senior housing existing bonus is, and we have to make it the same for workforce. So I don't have a particular opinion I'm not offering anything whether senior housing should get a bonus. That's what it is. I'm sure the community would revisit that if that's, at some point if that's a concern. Should senior housing have a bonus? That's a debatable point.
And one other small question that Robin asked, in Section J, it does mention Church Hill District. Is that accurate? Was that?
That's only because as we were, we had to have a default for the dimensional standards in this overlay district, and the board looked at all of the zoning districts, and for whatever reason, the standards given in the Church Hill district for building height and density and all that just seemed the best fit. So those are the ones that were referenced. So it's nothing about the Churchill zone, except that set of parameters was the best fit, with a few exceptions that are noted.
Which is 5,000 square feet per multi-family dwelling unit.
Right, so that's the density,
It's 4,000.
which is actually
something.
44.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me,
Yeah.
the reason we chose the Churchill ones is they provided us the ability to take a piece of property that is currently potentially undeveloped, create a lot of residential units on it while maintaining the maximum amount of open space on it. So the focus there, right, is to be able to get the units in and keep the majority of that property as is. And that's why we went with those
Okay.
set of numbers.
Well, that's helpful explanation. Thank you. So first, thank you for all the time and work that Planning Board Housing Task Force has put into this. And of course, you know, I favor workforce housing. Who doesn't? However, the devils and these details seem to have a lot of devils in them. So I just want to go through a few of the things that caught my eye. And I do acknowledge this is a very complex document. I do hope there'll be a presentation because it's confusing and a lot of the decision